everyone, and welcome again to ELI on Air, the weekly ELI Talks interactive show, where we talk with interesting folks from across the Jewish spectrum about ideas of Jewish religious engagement, literacy, and identity. My name is Miriam Brousseau, and I'm the ELI Talks Program Director. I'm very excited to be here today with Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg, who gave a beautiful ELI talk a little while ago in Chicago about parenting as a spiritual practice. I'm also joined by Esther Kay, who is the ELI Talks Community Manager, and she's going to be helping us out with the conversation online. Thank you all so much for joining us today, for taking time out of your day, out of your lunch hour to be part of this conversation, where we're going to dig more deeply into Danya's talk and think a little bit more about ideas of parenting and godhood and the connections between being a parent and spirituality and the role of God as parent, especially as we approach the high holidays. And just a reminder, this is a totally interactive conversation. You're welcome to submit your questions and ideas, both right here through the video, which involves just opening up this little box in the lower left-hand corner of the video so that you can watch us in Google Plus and submit your questions there. You can also submit your questions via Twitter using hashtag ELI Talks, and Esther will help feed those through, and we'll ask them live on the air. And so with that, I'm very excited to jump right in with Rabbi Ruttenberg. We'll say goodbye to Esther for just the time being, and see her again soon. But to kick us off, so Danya, could you give us just a summary of your ELI talk and let us know some of the key points that you brought up in that for anyone who didn't have a chance to watch it before this conversation?
So the talk was really about the ways in which I think parenting is and can be even more sort of concretely framed as a legitimate spiritual practice in its own right. And in some ways we can draw from the Jewish tradition in order to give us some tools to really bring that to the forefront. For example, I talked about the ways in which Abraham Joshua Heschel's idea of radical amazement can really illuminate these little moments of wonder that we often have with our kids and the way they can help us engage our own lives with wonder. But I think there are also ways in which parenting itself is transformational and gives us a new lens with which to see the world. And I think there are ways in which taking the work of parenting seriously can transform the way we understand some major aspects of our tradition. So I talked about prayer and the ways in which understanding prayer as something that can happen both spontaneously, which is part of our tradition and at the forefront of other religious traditions, but not really a very strong theme in our tradition, can open up all sorts of space during the hard moments of caring for little kids, and the ways in which our understanding of our relationship to our children and the ways in which we are transformed through the act of loving them can open up new understandings of God and mystical experience, mystical connection, and what can be. So.
I love it. I was thinking about your talk recently as I was walking around the block with my 14-month-old who discovered a rock that he absolutely fell in love with and insisted on tossing it and chasing it and grabbing it and just examining it. And it reminded me of your stick story in the talk. So thank you for adding that layer to our walk around the block. Can you tell me a little bit about your inspiration for this whole mode of thinking? Where did the interest in the connection between parenting and spirituality come from?
So, I think sometimes the most interesting thoughts we have sometimes come out of the great mysterious beyond. I was in my car one day and I was coming back from a Jewish ritual, and it was in this much quieter, much more contemplative space than I usually am because I'm a harried working mom. And suddenly, just out of the blue, this question popped into my head about how many theologians throughout history have been mothers. And I knew right away that the answer was probably not very many. In the Christian tradition, we have a few female theologians who were monastics, were nuns, and in Judaism, can all point to maybe a handful who scholarly are looked to as teachers, but not really that many people doing serious work authoring what Judaism is and can be. When I thought about how transformational the act of becoming a mother was for me and how much my own ideas about spirituality and connection and God and prayer and everything had been thrown into the blender. I had my first son my first year after rabbinical school, so I'd already been pretty deep in Jewish practice for a while before that, and suddenly everything was different. And I started asking myself, okay, well, if this is a major way of engaging the world, and if traditionally mostly the people talking about God and parenting and what God and prayer and what spirituality are, we're not doing this work, which is, I think, a fair statement to make. Then what happens when we bring these things closer together? What's possible? So.
And so, why do you think it's important that we ask that question and that we make this connection between parenting and spirituality? What's at stake in thinking about this or not?
It's a 2,000-year or longer. It's an old blind spot that we have. So many treasures and so much depth, and yet there are entire ways of thinking about what it means to be a person in the world and what it means to be living in relationship to the divine and serving the divine that just haven't entered the mainstream sort of heart of our Jewish story. So I think what's at stake is first of all having a more complete understanding of what is and can be, and having more layers of human experience reflected in how we understand what Judaism is. And, obviously this work has the potential to be transformational for parents who are doing a really, really, really hard job and, frankly, could use all the tools at their disposal that, are available. So, I think this has the potential to make all of us more whole. That's the bottom line.
Well, I can certainly tell you as a new parent that I'll take all the tools and help and resources that I can get, and this is certainly one that I'd like to have in my box. So on our last ELI on Air, we spoke with Rabbi Danya and Rabbi Shai Held about Jews talking about God, and how in a lot of ways we don't spend a whole lot of time sort of thinking about connecting to the divine and bringing that into our language. And my sense is that bringing in this connection of spirituality and parenting provides a layer of language as well as kind of a way of bringing God into those more mundane moments and those hard moments of parenting. So I really I like that aspect of it. And your talk, I think, is mostly about the way that spirituality can be infused in parenting, and seeing parenting, as you said before, as a legitimate spiritual practice in and of itself. But with the high holidays upon us, how can we see the flip side of that? How can we sort of infuse ideas of parenting in this very universal and very difficult and rewarding process, and bring that into our spirituality and our connection to God during the high holidays?
I mean, obviously there are a lot of pieces of this. The first thing that comes to mind is thinking about teshuvah, the work of what's usually translated as repentance, of returning to who you need to be and where you need to be, and really facing down when you have not been that person and trying to fix that path. As parents, this is work that hopefully we are doing all the time, trying to face down honestly the ways in which we've missed the mark with our kids, and how we can come home to that, and how we can make amends when we have acted not quite like the parent we wish we would in an ideal world, and how we can really make amends with our kids. And then really the work of tshuva is about becoming the person that you need to become. And Maimonides says that perfect tshuva is defined as that moment when you arrive at the place of sin, of misstep, and you make a different decision the next time. And my rabbi, Alan Liu, once said, well, how do you know, how on earth could you possibly get to the same place that you got to last time when you screwed up? And he said, look, if you don't do the work to become a different person, you're going to find yourself back in that place again and again and again. And certainly as parents, we find that. You will put yourself in that situation. Those situations will keep finding you until you really do that work. And certainly we have the opportunity and should be making tshuva all year round, but this is a time to really do a deep, intensive, sort of deep clean of our lives. Alan Liu also said that one of the ways you can sort of illuminate who you are is to pay close attention to how you are with food, how you are with money, or how you are with sexuality, and to just notice all the little ways in which you behave, and when you make a decision to indulge even though you know you shouldn't, and when you don't let yourself have pleasure or joy, and how you are in the day-to-day, and that will sort of bring your whole life into focus and tell you everything you need to know about who you are. And I think parenting is probably a fourth category. That if you pay close attention to how you are as a parent, and when you're able to be compassionate and generous and loving, and when you're able to bring out measures of justice, and when you are not the person you need to be, and what that looks like, and when that happens, that can offer the opportunity to really understand your life in a global sense. So I think that's one way that parents can use thinking about the high holidays in, use the work as the high holidays in their parenting in a clear way. And I think for all of us, this is a time when we're talking about compassion and judgment. Mm-hmm. When are you coming down hard and saying, you know what, it's time for the proverbial, is God going to put you in timeout? Or when is it time to say, you know what, it's really hard being a person, and sometimes just getting through the day is work enough, and you're not going to always do it perfectly, and maybe that's okay. And when do we need to engage with ourselves in judgment and compassion? We engage with the people who have hurt us with judgment or compassion, and how can really looking at ourselves with a loving, caring eye, of someone who just wants to see ourselves grow into the people we need to be and do our best, the way every parent wants for their children. How can that kind of softer view help us, encourage us to grow during this time of really intense transformation?
So I want to take something specific about the high holidays, and that's this term Avinu, right? Which you also bring up in your talk, our Father, which is often paired with Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, which is kind of which there's some interesting sort of things to play off of those two terms being put together as well. But what does the term Avinu invoke for you? Because you've mentioned both judgment and compassion, which are both huge themes of the high holidays. But I think there's a tendency to sort of see the high holidays as the time you're being called into the principal's office, right? Or the time that you're being, that you're being put in timeout or whatever it is, that there's much more of a focus on the heavy-handedness as opposed to the compassionate side. And so I'm just curious, what does the term Avinu evoke for you, and what could it or should it evoke in Jews everywhere?
Right. I mean, for me, for a very long time, I had a lot of trouble with the language of Avinu, the sense of, Daddy or Zeus or Santa Claus, up in the sky, seeing you when you're sleeping and knowing when you're awake and putting you in timeout, or, you know, zapping you with the thunderbolt or judgment or whatever it is. All of those metaphors were very tied up in my head, and I think they are for a lot of people. And sort of the patriarchal nature of this, and of course it's father and not, you know, mother, and why does it have to be anthropomorphic at all? And, you know, I wasn't very interested in that language. And then little by little I started to think, well, okay, what is this liturgy trying to pull out of us? And, you know, Avenu is the part of us that's a child looking for comfort and safety, and Malkeinu, our king, is the part of us that seeks justice in the world and wants the world to be a fair place, maybe. And since becoming a parent, it's changed a lot. I mean, you know, the decision to use Avinu and not, you know, our father and not our mother, fine. That's probably a historical sort of moment. But this idea of thinking about the divine, again, with this compassionate, loving eye of a parent that is concerned for you and concerned for your well-being and just wants you to be safe and whole and just wants to, you know, kiss your proverbial boo-boos. And you know, the reason there's a timeout at all, if there is one, is not because you're a bad monkey who needs to be punished and, you know, striking your chest, but because you need to learn how to be better, and that this might help. You know, that this is somebody that the image of the divine, and I'm you know, generally not very interested in the sort of anthropomorphism of God, but, you know, that would be proverbially staying up late worrying about you and just wanting you to be happy, for me changes my encounter with that liturgy a lot. Mm-hmm. And then when I started to think about the sort of larger implications of this parenting lens on theology, you know, in my talk I use this metaphor of you know, God as the pregnant woman, and us as the fetus. You know, the ways in which we are, in some ways, potentially separate, and in some ways deeply, deeply, deeply intertwined. And our ability to eat and our ability to breathe, you know, is part of something larger in which we are encased and probably not even aware. You know, I think for me that softens a lot of the intensity of this, you know, Daddy, are you mad at me? Feeling. I had this moment, I don't know, a few months after my first son was born, where I was walking on the street, and I saw somebody, and it doesn't matter the details of this somebody. Usually my first reaction would have been something, you know, kind of a nastiness or a judgment or, you know, kind of a gawking curiosity about this person, maybe even a revulsion, I don't know. And instead, I just, the question entered my mind about how this person's parent, this person's mother, would think about him. Mm. And suddenly I just looked at this person and just wanted them to be okay. And I just wanted them to be safe and whole and happy and doing good in the world and feeling good inside. And then that feeling started to expand, and I started to wish that for, like, you know, the guy at the stoplight playing too loud music in his car, and the woman, you know, coming out of the store, and just sort of all of the people around me. I wished the same thing for all of them. And, you know, I think that's a moment when, you know, the divine element within us taking over, right? When we can let that part drive, and the part of me that is a mother is also the part of me that can access sort of some of my holiest wishes for other people, and to let my own behavior dictate, you know, come out of those wishes. You know, I don't know that God thinks and does and wants. That's not my theology, but the idea of a God who just thinks and wants us to be safe and okay, I think, is transformative for me.
There were a couple of, as you were speaking, there were a couple of beautiful comments that came in from Avi on Twitter. He said, in reference to the comments about tshuva, that kind of returning takes radical honesty.
Mm.
I think that's such a beautiful phrase. And he also tweeted, kids will call out when parents don't live up to the expectations they set for others. So I wonder if you can just react to that. I think there's something about sort of the kind of inherent hypocrisy of parenting that I feel like there are some implications there for how we think about our relationship to God and our own parenting. So if you could just speak to that for a moment.
It's hard, you know. No, you can't have any chocolate, but mommy's totally going to be sneaking, you know, or in the other room, right? I think, you know, as parents, we're all inconsistent, complicated, messy people. And the challenge of trying to figure out how to model good for our littles while, you know, both, you know, being the complicated people that we are, and also, you know, there's sometimes there are logistical challenges and such that get into this. You know, I do not have a gigantic meltdown after I've had too much sugar in my system, and you know, my kid sometimes does. But it's true. I mean, that part's true. It does. It's complicated, and I think those times when we can be aware of our inconsistencies and hypocrisies are opportunities. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is, again, one of those moments that if you can pay close attention to how you, whatever in the world, you know, for the month of Elul, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, starting from now, we're midway through Elul until Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, whatever, you know, whenever you would want to take this on as a practice throughout the year, that if we're willing to keep close tabs on who we are and how we are as parents and with our kids, you know, those moments of hypocrisy are going to come straight up to the surface, and they're going to flag themselves right away, and then we can, I think, really push ourselves to ask ourselves why we said that or made that decision, and whether or not there's a different way that we can handle a situation that maybe has a little more integrity. You know, and that pushes us to be better people everywhere, you know?
Mm-hmm. So so I'd like to take a moment and just think about, or get your read on, what are the instances in Jewish text or tradition where God really comes out as a parent, and what can we learn from those examples about being a parent, first of all, but also about the connection between parenting and spirituality?
So there are two things that come to mind right away. One is, of course, in the Torah. It's well established by others, not me, that one clear and easy way to read the story of the Exodus from Egypt and the coming into the wilderness is the birth narrative, right? That is the creation of the Jewish people, and they go from Mitzrayim, the narrow place, through water, and then emerge suddenly as a you know, newborn people, if you will, and Israel struggles. You know, there's a lot of sort of toddler mishigas in that story. They're not happy. Why isn't it this way? You know, we don't want manna anymore. We want this. You know, why can't I have, you know, the Elmo cup right now? Whatever. You know, there's you can read it as a sort of toddler phase, but there's this birth story, and the divine response to suddenly, you know, being landed with this people in God's proverbial metaphoric lap is to create a covenant with them, and to say, we're not just in relationship, but we're going to consciously and intentionally say that we are covenanted one to the other. And though in ancient covenants traditionally it's a two-sided agreement, you know, if one party doesn't hold up the one side the other, then, you know, the covenant's broken. there's plenty of writing talking about the ways in which Israel can break their side of the covenant kind of whenever, but God being God, God can't break God's covenant. And that covenant, I think it was Rebecca Goldstein who said, is about saying yes before you know what it will cost you. And that's what we do as parents. Right? We agree to let these people into our lives for the rest of our lives and to be their parent no matter what, and to understand that as a sacred bond that is going to demand much of us, even if we don't know what it is yet. And to accept that the creation of this bond is going to have a certain kind of a price. And we choose it, and we choose it again and again and again and again, no matter how hard it is. And so, I think that's one thing, is that we can choose to think about the unbelievable power we have over our children's lives in a sort of covenantal way. And, marriage is often referred to as a covenant. That language is often sort of brought into discussions about nuptials, but I think that language brought more to the surface in the parent-child relationship could, I don't know, both be interesting philosophically and also in people's lived reality. So that's one piece. And then another text that comes to mind is there's a midrash, a Jewish legend, that there's several variations on the same theme. One is that when God gave the people of Israel manna from heaven, it came in amounts and tastes according to what the eater needed. And so, to this person it tasted like one thing, to this person it tasted like something else, to this person it satisfied in this way. And there's another midrash, another legend that says that when God gave the Torah at Sinai, every single person heard it at the tone that they needed. So different people received the same exquisite experience, in a whisper, in a murmur, in a song, in a shout, depending on who they were. And I think we need to. This is not a great insight in terms of actual parenting, but that the importance of actually seeing the child in front of us and really remembering again and again and again that one size is never going to fit all, and that who this exact person is in front of us requires us to leave who we are. To a sense, we have to, in order to understand this child, we need to get into their world. We need to go outside ourselves and extend ourselves beyond who we are in order to be in that space where whatever you have to say is something plausible that a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 14-month-old can understand. And we need to go outside ourselves so that we can even better really understand the question in the first place. And so, I think we are constantly trying to figure out, as we give over the Torah of our lives to our children, trying to figure out how to modulate, and the Torah that this exact child might have needed yesterday is no longer what they need today, and so this requires a lot of flexibility, sort of intellectual flexibility of us. But when we're able to enter into their space, that's when we're able to be really there for them and give them what they need.
I think it's a beautiful message to actually close on. We're close to the end of our time together. I also want to take a moment, and I'll bring Esther back into the video. The three of us were talking previously about acknowledging that we are having this conversation on the anniversary of September 11th, and so for all of our viewers out there, I want you to know that we've kept in mind throughout this entire conversation anyone who lost parents, anyone who lost children, and we have you in our thoughts on this really difficult memorial. And so with that, I really want to heartfelt thanks to Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg for spending your time and sharing your wisdom. Danya, you have a book on the way on the same topic. When should we expect to put that on our shelves?
So the book on parenting as a spiritual practice, which will have some title that is still to be determined. My Twitter's at the bottom. If you have a suggestion of what I should call it, please let me know. Will be out spring 2016, I believe.
Excellent. All right. Yes. And many, many thanks to Esther Stanowitz for keeping the conversation going online and just helping, being a wonderful presence in all of these things. Eli on Air happens every week. So we'll see you again next week, same time, same place, with more inspired Jewish ideas. Thank you again to Rabbi Ruttenberg and to Esther K. for helping us out today. And thank you to all of you for watching and sharing your ideas and your questions. And we will see you on air next time. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.